Good morning, everyone. Actually, good afternoon, everyone. Since we shifted, this is the Elementary School Building Committee, and as you know, we have invited members of the CTA team to talk to us. So when I'm gonna, as I call out everybody's name, maybe you can quickly introduce yourself. The first order is to make sure the members of the committee can hear and be heard. I'm Kathy Shane. I am the chair of the committee and a town councilor. Paul?
Paul Bockelman, Town Manager.
Dr. Z?
Hey, Dr. Z, Superintendent of Schools. How are you?
Jonathan Salvin?
Afternoon. I'm Jonathan, committee member.
Tammy?
Hi, I'm Tammy Sullivan Daly, principal of Fort River, and I'm doing lunch duty.
Okay.
Sorry.
Bruce?
Hi, Bruce Coldham. I'm a committee member as well. And like Jonathan, we're both architects. I'm former and he's current.
Melissa?
Melissa Zawatsky. I'm the finance director for the town.
And Deb, I'm just having people introduce themselves since we have some guests.
Hi, I'm Deb Leonard. I am a member of the Amherst School Committee and appointed by the Amherst School Committee to serve on this committee.
Alicia?
Hi, everyone. My name is Alicia Walker. I am a town councilor at large. I will join you all via video in just a moment.
Okay. And Rupert? Rupert, I can see your name. So Rupert, at the point you get connected, just indicate in some way. I think you have actually met everybody, and Rupert is unfortunately leaving us, but he's been our amazing facilities director at the schools. So I'm going to turn the meeting over to Ksenia. Margaret notified me that going forward, Ksenia will be running these meetings. And she's going to introduce the team and between them, take questions on scheduling now that we have a general contractor on board.
Yep.
Ksenia.
Thank you. And I'm just going to start by sharing the agenda and walk down it before we get started. So we'll
Hey,
talk.
Ksenia, just a minute. I see Rupert's hand is up. Rupert, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm sorry I have a little bit of internet issue, but I am here and I can hear and see most of you.
Okay, you're most welcome to be here. Thank you. Okay, Ksenia.
So we'll touch on the overall schedule. We will introduce our new partner in the project, CTA Construction Company, and Jeff Hazelwood is here representing them. Do an update on the Net Zero Sustainability Subcommittee, next steps with that. Review invoices. Other issues not anticipated 48 hours in advance, public comment, and will adjourn. So not a heavy agenda today. I'll take it off screen for now. We are entering a wonderful and exciting phase of a project. And for the first time in several months, we're super excited to talk about what we need to talk about because we are a go, right? So we have brought our general contractor, CTA, on board. They are ramping up and getting the project, establishing a site presence, getting the project off the ground. They're working through the necessary permitting and working with all the appropriate agencies, both local and state, to get approved to go, and are expecting to start making some progress out there if we're lucky by the end of this month. Overall, we are basically on schedule, on the originally anticipated schedule, with the new building projected to be finished in the summer of 26. There will be, as always expected, a phase 2, which takes down the existing building and creates the fields and finishes site work. There will be some tweaks and adjustments around the edges of those as we go forward, but we are on plan and we're moving forward. Jeff, I'll pass it over to you now to introduce yourself and say a few words about CTA and how you're approaching the project, and then we'll move on.
Great, thank you. I'll be very brief. Just thank you for inviting me. We're very happy to be through all of the roadblocks of being in the job. And we're very appreciative that the town, stood behind us the whole time. We have a great team. We've been meeting weekly online, and we're excited to get started out there. And that's it. I can't be appreciative enough. We appreciate the opportunity.
So, Ksenia, I want to throw it open for people's questions about scheduling or when what happens. And I know some of it you may not be able to ask with precision, but so at this point, committee members,
Kathy,
go
can you just,
ahead and, yeah.
Angelica is here. Do you want to recognize her?
Oh, sure. She joined. Hi, Angelica. Welcome.
Hi, everyone.
She is a committee member. And so, Jeff, I'm expecting some of the questions may be directed to you or our other team. So anybody, questions, comments, do your hand signal and I will call on you. Okay, Tammy.
Okay, sorry, it's going to be loud. I'll try and speak above the noise. When will construction actually begin, so I can let staff and students know as well as families? Second, who do I send our MCAS schedule to ensure that whatever type of instruction is happening will kind of mitigate the distractions with construction?
Great questions, Tammy. I'll take those. Firstly, we will continue running communication between the existing school and the contractor through the owner's project manager. So please go ahead and send it to me. Lee will be out there, back out there with you again. Lee Figgins, our clerk of the work, as soon as the work starts, and he will be back in communication with you, Tammy, as well as with CTA creating that bridge and single point of contact. The work will be at earliest starting maybe the last week of this month. And I will say that the fencing perimeter is already in place. We did all the hard lifting of subdividing the site back last spring and summer with the early site package work. So there will be no changes to the circulation that is publicly accessible for staff and parents and drop off and pickup. All the work that will be happening will be inside the fence. The subcontractor parking lot will be created inside the fence line. We've already created a separate entrance to the site and with a separate driveway in the previous phase. You will start seeing activity happening behind the fence, and it's a decent distance away in terms of noise. I mean, when we did the rammed aggregate piers, the ground improvements in the first phase, that was a noisy activity. There's not a whole lot that gets noisier than that. There's some, but not all, and it's not going to happen for a little while. It's all going to be distant from you. And the first chunk of work that's going to be happening is stripping off some of that surcharge soil, overburdened soil that's been placed. Right now, it's doing a lovely job of acting as a blanket and keeping that ground from freezing, we hope, which is a nice benefit as we are starting this foundation work in the winter. There are some challenges with it that are completely manageable and everybody's on top of. So the first chunk of work is going to be working across the site and starting to dig up and place foundations in the ground. It's going to be a little while before you still see anything coming up out of the ground. You will start seeing some more construction traffic on the street. The contract does have requirements. The construction contract does have requirements to not do that during pickup and drop off. Right, so they're aware of the pickup and drop off times and know that that's not a great time for anybody to be successful in coming and going, although they do have a separate entrance and it should be quite manageable.
Bruce, thank you.
I guess the question is, are we yet in a position to be able to answer the question as to the impact of the months of delay that we've had on the completion schedule?
If you'd like, Cassandra, I could jump in and answer that question.
Please.
We've been working hard with CTA to effectively ensure that the completion schedule gets maintained, that the building is occupiable for the fall semester of 2026. There's some internal schedules that get adjusted a little bit in the contract. We're also looking at likely the final completion of phase 2, which is primarily the work out beyond the demolition of the school, the new field construction activity likely happening in the spring of 2026. But that we expected the building to be coming down in the fall of, 27. Thank you. That the building will be coming down in the fall of 2027 once the students are in the building in the fall of, I'm getting it backwards. The building would be coming down in the fall of 2026, and the students would be occupying in the fall of 2026, and the final site work would be completed in the spring of 2027.
My understanding is this is achievable because you've made some allowances for overtime. Is that correct or there's in terms of juggling schedules?
We have, and when we finally saw the settlement of the protest, we realized that of no fault of the town and no fault to CTA, we had lost several key months at the very beginning of this schedule. And given that this is a school project, we couldn't just say, add a couple more months to the tail end of the schedule, because that would not allow the school to be opened when the school needs to be open. So we recognized that associated with that, it was going to be necessary to start construction right in the middle of the winter time. And it was also going to be necessary to accelerate some of the work activities during the course of construction. And as a result of that, there are some additional costs that CTA will be incurring to work overtime. We have put a procedure in place where we're actually going to review those needs on a weekly basis in advance of any work being done and approve those activities, and then we'll be reviewing them effectively on a daily basis as they're ongoing to reconcile the agreed upon additional work against the actual additional work, and then ultimately reconciling that to the cost of that work.
Jonathan.
Sorry, it took me a moment to unmute myself. Ksenia, I assume that not for obviously for today's meeting, but in future meetings, will actually, as part of the meeting, will be presented with some sort of Gantt chart, high level schedule, just so that folks can see what the upcoming milestones are, and how the progress is generally coming along.
Most definitely. CTA is hard at work at working out the sequencing and the schedule, with the hard parts being what's happening up front as we're getting started, and how we manage that last summer and turnover. So we will certainly be providing it ahead of hopefully the next, I may be shooting myself in the foot here, but hopefully the next one of these meetings, and also providing a summarized, ongoing, some sort of graphical statement to the effect as we continue through a project.
I see Bruce's hand is up, and I also have a question. So go ahead, Bruce.
Kathy, I just wanted to say thank you, Bob. I find that a very satisfactory answer, and I'm very pleased to hear it.
So Ksenia, as I have, I think we put holds on everyone's calendar. The next meeting is February 14th, Valentine's Day. So that would be our Valentine's Day present would be colorful Gantt charts to show us where each of the pieces. You know, I think one of the pieces that will be of interest to the kids and a broader interest to our high school and middle schoolers is when the ground source wells get dug. You know, just understanding. I mean, I've seen it over at Amherst College, so you may not know exactly when that's happening, and you know, I'll ask it as a question, coordinating with Tammy. So I think there's a noise level, some noise associated with that, but there's also some cool equipment that comes in. So I'm thinking of, you know, there's certain points because it's a net zero building that this will be exciting, not just disrupting. So do you have any sense of, is that sooner or later when that comes in?
Jeff, can I ask you that question?
Sure. Those will probably start, we're going to focus on the foundation and again, the structural steel up first. Then we'll start to enclose the building. And after that point, that's when the geothermal wells will be. The good thing is they're on the south side of the building and not on the north side of the building. So they're the furthest point away from the school from a noise standpoint. But my guess is probably late spring, early summer, something like that.
Yeah,
And
so
Tim-
I understood I couldn't pin you down to the time, but all of us and the school would have a lot of advance notice of that, you know, as opposed to it's coming
Definitely.
up on such and such a date.
Most definitely. Yeah. And I also want to say that, Tammy, as we did a little bit with the early site package, of doing some student education and opportunities for them to interview members of a team, and we can re-engage either with the same teacher that we talked to then, or you know, whoever you give us, and see what parts of this learning would be great to work in to your program.
Awesome, thank you.
Angelica. And
So,
welcome, by the way.
Thanks, everyone. And I wanted to piggyback on the question that you asked, Kathy, as well, because my daughter goes to Fort River, so there's been a lot of excitement, and I hear it at home when all of the things are happening, but also concern. You know, there was concern when the trees cutting. There was concerning for the kids. So I really am glad to hear about the educational component to kind of break it down to our littles about what's going on. And I wanted to also add particularly about our students with special needs, because one of the things that I think was most attractive about doing it in this site, if I recall, was the kind of space buffer that we had between the big equipment and the noise, because in Wildwood, it was really compressed, and so the noise level would be much greater. There was also assurances, or they had told us about special things that would be done to abate the noise level. And I know some of our learners, I'm thinking particularly students on that have sensory concerns. This will be a time where I just want to flag that there will be extra sensory concerns as it gets louder, and particularly also because this is going to be disruptive. So needs for communicating to our students, maybe in the Ames programs and other programs also, about the disruption that's coming, about the noise that's coming, and all of that. So I just wanted to flag that, the importance of that.
Thank you, Angelica. Those are great points. We were highly aware of all of these matters in the early phase. CTA will have some catching up to do in being introduced to the site, and we will make sure to be the conduit for that. Also, Tammy will restart meeting with you and talking through what are the current recess times, what are the places that are most sensitive, and start making sure that everybody is good neighbors to each other, or that we are good neighbors to you, I should say. It only needs to go in that direction. Absolutely, Angelica. Keeping the kids safe is the highest priority. And in terms of noise, the noise of what's left to do with site work and placing foundations will be kind of a steady, loud, but distant situation. The more sort of loud, banging, disruptive, distinct noises generally come when we start raising the structural steel, and well before, and it's also the most fun to watch, correct? Because that building is going to go up faster than you can imagine once all the pieces of the erector set are on site. So we will be well ahead of that time talking about both how to make it safe to observe what's happening, because it becomes a completely restricted site because of the safety issues around steel erection, but also how to sort of prepare those who are sensitive to sudden noises for what's coming.
Anyone else? I'm not seeing any other hands. I mean, Jeff, we have really been waiting for being able to put a face to a general contractor and say it's a go. So thank you for making the time to meet with us. And I think, Paul, with your communication staff, at the point something is really active, we did a ground baking when it was dirt. But we can do some pictures or something to really say, that the project is now becoming real.
There's always a topping off ceremony. So when the structural steel gets up as high as it's going to go, there's usually a great ceremony and an opportunity to celebrate then, because there's something to see. And as we start coming back to you in these meetings, as we have something to show, we look forward to turning a piece of the agenda here into a bit of show and tell. We'll bring you a few representative pictures every month, and an update on the schedule, how we're doing financially, and make sure that everybody is feeling informed.
Well, thank you. So the next item is a really brief piece. We had a question from the public about at the last meeting about the Sustainability Committee. And one of the things that hadn't been posted yet, and it was really my just missing it, is at the last sustainability net zero meeting, a lot of questions were raised about thinking through the plug load and net zero and our EUI. I see you have your hand up, Paul.
Do you need Jeff? I mean, he's welcome to stay. Do you need him for this conversation?
No, Jeff, if you want to leave, you can. This is as an update on this, but so what I hadn't posted is right after that meeting, Danisco and our modelers got to work and redid the analysis, updated it. And we are still completely on track to hitting our EUI level, which is critical for the Eversource reimbursement that we get, whatever they call the adder that we get on construction. And we are fine for net zero. So right now, there are no meetings of the subcommittee scheduled, and we'll wait to hear from the Danisco team when and if we need one. But the major work of that was making sure the design elements and the components of the building were going to achieve net zero. And I know Bruce had raised more than once that at some point, the users of the building are going to have to be thinking through how they use the building, because a lot of the use, and there may be some work that the committee can do to help do a manual or training, but we're a little ways from thinking about that, and that's not as much the design team. So that's why the that report. That update, for anyone who wants to see it, is posted in the packet on the Net Zero Sustainability Committee that we have on our website. So you can see the changes and the additional work that was done. So that's all I just wanted to make sure we didn't leave that question hanging. And so for new members as well as current members, we are losing Rupert as a key member of that team. And so right now it's the subcommittee, it's Bruce, Kathy, and Jonathan. And I see that Bruce's hand is up. Bruce.
Yes, Kathy, and I agree that whereas this work is something we can do, we don't have to begin it right immediately now. This is something that could be months away before we dig ourselves into it and more deeply. But there is one question that I have, which I just want to, I think I know the answer, but I want to reassure myself and others that that is the answer. I did look at that revised EUI, energy use intensity analysis that Thornton Tomasetti had done, and particularly around the use schedule, there's some skepticism, I guess I have. It seems to be fairly conservative about when the auditorium and so the cafetorium and perhaps also the gym might be used after hours. It's the sort of thing that suggests that if this building is as successful as we hope and expect it will be, that those use schedules will be more intensive, particularly on the public side. I'm not so much concerned about the school terms schedules because those are reasonably set. But if this is a popular building and and it gets used more than we've projected in that chart, then we'll top over the EUI. I think I've asked this question before, that this is, I think I understand correctly, do I, that this is not a measured annual use, which some of the more aggressive energy use intensive buildings and zero net energy buildings are evaluated on annual actual use. I think I understand correctly that from the reimbursement point of view and from achieving the EUI, that it's essentially a modeled, that we meet the modeled projection. Is that, do I correctly understand that?
Tim, you want to answer that? Because it'd be better it comes from you.
Sure. So the Eversource incentives are broken into different buckets. The largest of the buckets, without going into too much detail, are based on the design and the modeled performance. There is a small component that is based on evaluation after the first year of occupancy or once it's constructed and how it's performing. But that is a one-time evaluation, so it's not obviously going into the future. They're not going to come back in 2 years if you've used the gym and take away that part of the reimbursement. And then just to say the reimbursement that is tied to actual monitor performance is the smallest part. It's honestly 5 cents a square foot. So compared to all of the other, the considerably larger heat pump adder, the money that you get for meeting the 25 EUI as a model projection, those are all make up by far the largest percent of the resource and the incentive. So there is a small part that will get measured once after occupancy, but not a continuing ongoing basis.
Well, good. So that means that the challenge before the Net Zero Committee and any engagement that we choose to have with the user, occupants, maintenance staff, and so forth, is really an internal challenge just to see how well we can do. It's a set of standards that we impose upon ourselves. It's not something that we are doing in order to preserve a part of the budget. So I just want to be clear with myself and with everybody else why we're doing this, and therefore clearly delaying a few months and getting things going, and so we understand, get the pattern of construction going, and then we can engage in this personal quest that the committee and the town might choose to engage upon.
Thank you. any other questions on this? And so for people, I think, but Deb and Dr. Z, you weren't with us early on, but this was really looking at how often the lights are on, how much we're drawing electricity. So that's how we figured out also how much solar panel we needed, because the net zero is the solar panels generate the energy that we use. And I will resend just by email that the well more than $1 million incentive is at the beginning. As Tim just said, this is not the big money is when the building gets built and open. Rupert.
Just, just like to add to your list, in addition to lights, how the building occupants use their windows. When the windows are open for ventilation and it has a negative effect on energy, and how can we best communicate to them when that fresh air is costing us dollars. And that's something that we'll be working on, I think, where the Energy Sustainability Committee will be working on, because that's a big part of what affects. Not only is it the appliances that you plug in, but it's the windows that you leave open. Thank you.
Are there any other questions of design team, Ksenia, scheduling? And I think what I heard is that at the next meeting, we're going to get more detail on what's happening, and we may actually be seeing some things happening. So if not, we're at the point of the agenda of looking at invoices. And we can't throw Rupert a party, but this is my understanding is it's Rupert's last meeting and makes us all very sad, but maybe you'll come back when we it's a retirement party. So I'm turning it back to Ksenia and Connor for invoices.
Go right ahead, Connor.
Sounds good. Am I sharing?
It says started, nothing showing up yet. At least I don't see anything yet.
There do I. There it is.
Perfect. So we'll start with our executive summary in our top left, our roadmap ahead. Well, our project roadmap. And this month we have a lot more colored in yellow, and that's because we finally have CTA on board and their contract executed. So a lot more of this white roadmap ahead. This brick road here is filled in. A quick summary to go over. Again, the green is what has been invoiced previously. The black is the current invoice package, and it's a little bigger this month, and we will get to that, which is actually exciting because that means the project is moving forward. And then again, our yellow piece here, which is now a lot bigger. And then we still have quite a bit of roadmap ahead, and that's for FF&E, procurement, Corkine, and our contingency, and a couple other miscellaneous things.
And Connor, let's just translate our letter soup. FF&E stands for furniture, fixtures, and equipment, which gets purchased separately for the building. And Corkine is potentially the surfacing for the playground. You will remember something about that from the past, so that still needs to be procured. And that road ahead also includes the contingency that is part of a project.
Thank you. So our current invoice package is $1,121,151, and that's 1% of the total project budget. Invoice previously is 9%, so that will bring us up to 10% of the total project budget invoice at this point, leaving 90% remaining. Scrolling down to our cash flow, and we actually have a cash flow for you guys this month, so we're excited about that. Now that we know the timeline. So we can see here our green bars are our invoice packages, our previous invoice packages, leading up right here to this tall yellow bar, which just shows where we are right now. We have a much larger invoice package this month, which again we'll get to and is very exciting. The blue bars are our future expected spending. And then this large blue bar at the end is where we're holding our contingency, just so that we don't show on our cash flow that we're expecting any savings. We could have savings at the end, but we don't want to show that on the cash flow until it's real. So we put the contingency at the end just to show that here.
I'll add before we move on that the up until now, when we've looked at this graph, the gray lines and the gray bars, which represent the original guesstimate, the original projection, were generally lined up with what was going on. And then we were unable to present a cash flow period for a period of time because we just didn't know how to project the schedule. Now that we have comfort around some fixed end dates, we're showing it to you. And so for the first time, you're seeing kind of the effect of the delay that we had. And that's the space between the gray line, cumulative line, and the darker cumulative line. And you could see that in short order, we will be catching up and overtaking it and getting back on track. So that's the story that the picture is telling. Thanks.
You can see that gray line Ksenia was talking about here. That's the original forecast. And then the darker line here, the blue, is updating based on our new projections, which are the blue lines. So unless there's any questions about that, I'll move on to the invoice package. And we can come back at the end if anybody thinks of some questions. Zoom out a little bit. So as I said earlier, our invoice package this month is $1,121,150.51. That's the total invoice package. A portion of this has already been paid, and the invoices are included here for record purposes only. So the amount that is going to be approved for payment this month is $1,120,808 and some change. And since I mentioned them already, I'll move down to those paid invoices first. There's just a couple invoices for Berkshire Design. They were developing the easement plan for Eversource and access to the utilities. And we've seen a couple of those before, but they're here again. They're small invoices. One of them's for $42 and some change. The other one's for $300. And that's 12% of their total contract value. And that brings them up to 93% complete. Moving back up to Answers invoice. Excuse me. One invoice from us this month for $16,677. This is 1% of our total contract, and that brings us up to 32% billing of our total contract. And again, there's a lot left, about 68%, due to the construction oversight activities that we still have to provide. There's no invoice from Danisco this month, but we do have our first invoice from CTA, and that is for $1,104,000 and $1,104,130 and some change. And that is for insurances and bonds. So no work has been performed yet, but they do have some insurances and bonds that they're billing for, and backup has been provided for those. And we can take a look at that when we scroll through. So this invoice is 2% of their total contract value. That leaves 98% remaining. So now scrolling through the invoices, first up, answers invoice. This is the title page, the transmittal page. And as always, please stop me and ask questions if you have any. This is the backup here. Moving on to CTA's first requisition. A little value here. And the breakdown, as we can see, is for bonds and insurances, and the backup is below.
And Connor,
Yep.
let's just pause for a second at the top of this, where it shows bonds, because I want to introduce the concept of retainage to the group, because it's not been much featured so far, other than for the early site package, and that is to say that each time we recognize a certain percent completion advancement in the work of a construction contract, 5% is held back as retainage, and that money, that is a standard practice, and that money remains held and unpaid until the end of a project, until a project is completed, to ensure that there is adequate incentive for all the subcontractors to stay engaged and finish strong at the end of a project. Come back and finish their punch list items and leave everything on a good note. So we won't always be talking to that number. I just wanted to at least once have mentioned that provision for that conservative provision exists and is being exercised.
Perfect. That's an important note, so thank you. And I was trying to highlight it on the screen, but we have our retainage columns, or the retainage columns rather, over here on the right.
I see Bruce has a question or a comment.
Yes, this is, I was going to ask at some point whether a schedule of values had been determined yet, and this is what I would, I guess, call a schedule of values. I think it's headed a continuation sheet, but I think it might be helpful to explain to the committee that at this stage there is such a thing as this, where basically the contract sum is broken down into the amounts for all of the fractions of the contract, and that this becomes the basis for basically everything that moves forward. I'm wondering whether we could get a PDF of this just at the beginnings, without necessarily any of the work yet being done, just to be able to see the way the contract is broken up.
Absolutely. That's a great point, Bruce. The packet will be posted and available. This schedule of values it's a work in progress. It's just starting out. CTA is working on buying out their subcontracts. About half of the subcontracts are fairly straightforward because they were publicly bid as the file subbidder. So we, the town, administered that bidding. Some of the remaining trades are still being bought out and selected and brought under contract by CTA. So that process will probably continue for a couple of months, and as time goes on, some of these lines, like for example, right now there's one line for concrete and one line for masonry, one line for openings, doors for windows, whatnot. That's going to start becoming fleshed out, and that is a very important part of the process. The norm in assessing how much it is fair to pay the contractor in a particular month on a particular piece of scope of work really relies on making sure that it's broken down into things that are easy to judge later on, easy to measure and pay, right? So you don't say, well, how much of a concrete have they done on the job? You say, well, how much of a second floor concrete slab have they done? And, and that you can judge as, oh, they're half done. right? So, and how each scope of work is broken down is very contextual to the type of work that it is. And before any of these big requisitions, applications for payment come to you, we are, as always, pre-reviewing them and recommending them for approval. The design team is highly involved in this process, as is our clerk of the work, Lee, in making sure that those percentages complete are assessed well, and that we're never paying ahead of what the combination of everybody's professional judgment tells us has actually been achieved. The goal with that is always to make sure that if ever a subcontractor or a sub to a subcontractor went out of business, where there's always bonds in place for another contractor to take their place, covered by insurance, but also that we've just never paid more than we have received in terms of product, in terms of actual building out on site. So there are robust procedures in place.
Thank you, Ksenia and Bruce. And we'll get this posted, Bruce, and sent out.
We'll keep scrolling through here. The rest of this is not much to see. You can see the SOV breakout by division. And as Ksenia mentioned, it'll get filled in and broken out as CTA continues to procure their subs. This page, it's the same thing as we saw above, just in a different format. It's fits the MSBA format. So just the same information in a more concise way. And then moving on to the backup for their insurance and their bond. And now finally the two Berkshire, I'm sorry, did someone say something?
No, that's sorry.
Okay, sorry. The two Berkshire Design Group invoices. The first one for $42.16, which again has already been paid by the town of Amherst and is just here for record purposes. And the last invoice here for $300. And that's it. And as always, we pre-reviewed these invoices and recommend them for your approval.
I make a motion that the committee approve the invoices as presented.
Second. Okay. Oop, there we go. You got your second. I'm not sure who it was. It was Paul.
Okay. And I will go around the room asking for a vote. Kathy is a yes. Jonathan?
Yes.
Bruce?
Yes.
Rupert?
Yes.
Angelica?
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes.
Tammy?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Dr. Z? And
Yes.
Alicia? And Alicia?
Yes.
No, this will be happening at each meeting, but I think it's actually a very good process that we get to see this as it rolls out. So, and the town, as everyone knows, the town staff has already reviewed everything at the point it's being presented to us. So Melissa gets to see it twice. So are there any other comments before I see if there is any member of the public that would wish to speak? Bob?
One item I wanted to mention that Bruce is very familiar with is one of the conditions for the site plan approval for this project was that the contractor come to the planning board to present their logistics plan. And just wanted to make folks aware that CTA will be going to the planning board on Wednesday evening to present that plan. My understanding is primarily making certain that zoning setbacks are met relative to trailers and other requirements on the project site. So if you hear anything or see anything that's posted, that's a requirement of the site plan approval for the project.
And Bob, that's this coming Wednesday, next week?
That's correct. Yes.
Deb.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody for their work and keeping the project on track for opening in fall. I know it was challenging, but it's very much appreciated.
Yeah, and I know there was a double team. Bob and internal staff, Melissa and others were working really hard with CTA to figure out how to make it work so we could answer Bruce's question. And we just lost several months. How are we going to stay on schedule? So thank you all very much. So at this point, I don't see any other hands up. So we are open for public comments. And I see one person is asked to speak.
Okay, to go ahead, Kathy.
Yes, you're with us, Maria.
Thank you. Hi, Maria Kopicki, South Amherst. Had a couple things. Kathy, thank you for addressing the net zero question that I had asked. And thank you, Bruce, for staying on top and hopefully even past what this committee is going to be doing in terms of users and looking forward into the future. I think that's good to be working on that now. One of my questions had been about what equipment would be purchased. That would, I'm assuming, be in the purview of the building committee. So it would be nice to know that the equipment that's going to be used in the building is going to be as energy efficient as possible to help us stay net zero and just help us stay climate friendly. So that would be great to get updates on as well. Also, it would be, thank you for all the information on Ksenia and Connor about the money part. It would be lovely to have, this is not so much your thing, but more the town. Soon, I'm assuming, folks are going to start seeing the impact of us starting to pay for this in property tax assessments. And so it would be great to give folks a heads up about that, let them know what's coming, what they can expect. You know, there's a tax bill due soon. And it would be nice to know what that would look like. I also appreciate the educational opportunities that you're thinking about for the kiddos here. I think Kathy mentioned even making sure that middle school and high schoolers who might have an interest in the net zero aspect particularly would want to be involved. I do want to make a plea, even though this is happening at Fort River. There's going to be kids there from currently other schools. And there's going to be some kids at Fort River who might not be going to this school. So I would love for there to be educational opportunity. And let's not forget about Crocker Farm. I would love for there to be educational opportunities for all our students throughout town for this, but also to do it in a considerate way and to be really sensitive to the fact that there's going to be redistricting. We don't know what kid's going to be going where, but you know, I think we can celebrate it and learn from this, but it would obviously have to be done in a sensitive way. So I would like to see that happening. Thank you so much. Very glad to see things moving along.
Thank you, Maria. I don't see any other hands up. So with no other hands up, I know at least one member said they needed to leave within an hour, and it looks like we are going to be efficient. I think in general, looking forward, these meetings won't take more than an hour. I posted this one as an hour and a half just to safeguard, since we were at kickoff with the general contractor if there were more involved questions. So I think, continue to post it that way since this time slot seems to work, but I will do my best to keep everything efficient and moving, to have it be a focused content, not just to meet. So I want to thank everyone, and the council has started a process, so I need to have a motion. I'll make a motion to adjourn and then take a vote.
Do you need a second, Kathy?
I do need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, so Kathy is a yes. Jonathan,
Yes.
Bruce,
Yes. Yes.
Tammy,
Yes.
Dr. Z,
Yes.
Angelica,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Melissa,
Yes.
Rupert.
Free at last. Free at last. Yes.
Although I would like to keep you for a long time. Alicia?
Yes.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining.